It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, October 14th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that thinks the Flyers got off to a solid, if not spectacular, start.
Yeah, I think it's a good start.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Russ, before we dig into these games a little bit, I feel like we got a bait and switch with the Emil Andre call up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we kind of figured it would kind of go that way, though. He's got to play. I mean, we'll
I
talk
know.
about it. I mean, there's a need for him. There's an actual
Yeah.
need.
Yeah, I think, like you said, we'll get into the detail of the Calgary game, but given, how tired they looked in the latter part of the game, having some fresh legs in addition to Noah Cates, I think would have helped. And speaking of Noah Cates playing in that game, that was the other big decision that was made with the lineup choices here that Jett Luchanko did not play in that second game against Calgary. John Tortorella saying he didn't want him to have a back-to-back too early,
Yeah, we
which
talked about that
yeah,
weeks ago. I felt like that was the right decision.
yeah. So I think that was honestly a really good decision. Just get
Yes.
him going a little slower, given how young he is. I know that Matvei Michkov is only like a year older, but it feels like a lot
No, but it's
more
different. Like he's
with
had more
experience.
professional experience. Like it's a
Yeah.
hardened. He's more of a hardened player than Jet is right now.
Yeah, so I think it makes sense when everything is said and done in terms of the lineup choice there. But again, I do question not putting Emil Andre in unless there was some sort of travel exhaustion issue or something that they were
Maybe
worried about. Maybe that's it.
he's got to
But
be in the next game, though.
yeah, I think so. I think so. I think, looking at the way the lines came out in the wash, the interesting thing to me is that when he did put Noah Cates in, he put him in on the fourth line and bumped Paling up to the third line, which they did some shuffling for sure. But I think that uh, given everything, I would have liked to see Cates with Farabee and Brink.
Me too.
But I don't know. I feel like we got out of Cates like what we say are his like really strong suits here was
Yes,
really
but
solid.
they think he's failing, though. That's the difference.
Well, I don't know if they think that yet. I think
Well, I
that
think they're treating him like he is, or he would be on a higher line.
maybe, maybe. I know Tortorella said specifically that he wanted to get Cates in, so it wasn't just sitting Luchanko; it was getting
No,
Cates in.
that
That
too. Yeah.
was like a balanced part of the
Hmm.
decision. So I think that was important. I also think
It
it was
was.
interesting that Ryan Paling got the Luchanko spot in power play 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's face it. Luchanko was 33% on faceoffs. He lost some big power play faceoffs. It improved somewhat. The power play did not improve, but at least puck possession improved.
Yeah, it felt like it did just because the first goal of the season was a
Oh,
power
no, no,
play
I get
goal,
it.
but
I mean, this is how low the bar is now. If you get a couple of power
yeah.
play goals, you're like, it's better. But then you look at the number and it's like it's 2 for 16.
Yeah, I will say though, like power play 2, we talked about that specifically
We did.
about Brink taking control of power play 2. That would be good for him. And I think that power play 2 looked really strong at points. I think
In game 1 for sure.
in game one, absolutely. Against the Canucks, it was much stronger than power play one. Now, power play
Yes.
one, I think, is cooking a little bit, and it's going to take time before it's ready. But I think once it does, it'll get there.
I don't
I
know.
think
I mean,
there's a
they've
lot
added the
to it.
one go to the net item, but other than that, when that doesn't seem to work, then they seem to be kind of reverting back. And I still think there's shackles on Jamie Drysdale. They absolutely do not let him be creative at all. He is not allowed to,
He's hanging out at the blue line,
yeah,
like, pretty far out, I think,
yeah,
and I think that does make a difference there. But wanna talk about the Canucks game a little bit more just because, A, they won that game, so it's more fun to talk about, but
sure.
so I think there's some really interesting things there. They split the time between Frost and Couturier on the line with Michkov and Travis Konechny. I think it was really interesting to see them trying out both of those things in the same game.
Yeah, I think that was interesting. I think again, though, um, while that was a good thing to do, Couturier looked good early, but by the end in overtime, he couldn't even skate anymore. Like his legs were just done. And I think they have to be cognizant of that. They say they are, but I think they really have to be. So, like for fans that were texting me, why is Couturier in overtime? It's a good thought. Maybe he shouldn't have been because he was already probably gassed before that, and he definitely got gassed out there.
Yeah, I think, they were probably feeling like they needed somebody that had a two-way game out there
I
in
know, but they
overtime,
have other
given
guys
it,
that can
but
do that.
it's a fair point. I think that that's just what the logic might have been, but,
Yes.
they won the game, so I'm not
Yeah.
gonna complain too hard about
No,
that.
something to point out though. I think we have to be balanced in the sense that look, Vancouver played with 5 defensemen almost the whole game except for 2 minutes. So,
Right.
that and Tyler Myers is a big piece. So that's something. The other thing was I got to put my hat off to Quinn Hughes. Over 31 minutes and I don't think he looked gassed at all. Like this
No.
guy is just incredible.
Yeah, as were both goaltenders in that game.
Yes. Oh yeah, Urson was terrific.
Yeah, I think that was a huge factor, like, both
He
goaltenders I
won him the
thought were.
game. He won him the game.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think that, John Tortorella had a really good assessment of his team, after the Vancouver game. He said they were slow getting out of the defensive zone. Their first touch wasn't good. 100% accurate. I think that was, something that you could see, really obviously. The defense took a while to get disciplined and structures. Now they did as the game progressed. I think, you saw Vancouver, having to work a lot harder to get their chances as the game progressed, and then Urson kind of backstopped that. But I do think that, again, I think partially because Johnson was in there, to be fair. The way they were structured was a little bit different. And then of course they had to depend on Travis Sanheim getting 24 minutes of ice time in that game, which was not great.
No, that was not great. Something else that was I had an open discussion with a guy who's a scout and also a former coach, and that was and this was a constant in both games, and it might be a function of Nick Seeler not being there, but you still shouldn't change your system. They're too loose out there on defense. Like they're almost giving the other team room, time, and space to get into the zone, and then they kind of like get ready to either block it or stick check it away or whatever, and that runs into problems with shots and the goalie really kind of getting worked early. And I think that was a constant in both games, and they've got to tighten that up somehow.
And it makes the breakout harder, right?
Yes,
Because there's like fewer lanes and fewer opportunities because the other team is in your zone
right,
or just exiting, right?
right,
So it makes it much more difficult to create offense when you're working from a purely defensive structure there.
yeah.
So I think that did have an effect on it, but I do think that the PK held, which was
Oh,
really
PK was great.
important.
I mean, they were really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the first 2 penalty kills, Urson saved them,
Yeah,
but then the last 3 total, the Canucks got 0 shots on goal in the
yeah.
last 3, and that was a huge, huge factor. I think, in the game as well. So really pleased with how the PK held in that game. I think overall, this was just like they ground out this game in a really effective way, and Urson kept them in it. But I think that they had, some really strong opportunities to win it, and maybe didn't. But I love, if you're going to go to a shootout, make it a 5-6 round shootout. Like,
Yeah, I
make
mean, I
it
think
more
it could have
fun.
gone both ways, honestly. I mean,
Yeah,
Vancouver had some great chances too. It just, yeah, this one worked out and they won the shootout, so that was good. And yeah, I think the only thing that would have made it better was if Mitchkov would have scored on the shootout. But that's fine. I
right.
mean, it's the way it goes.
Yep. Well, he did get his first point in the NHL in the game versus Calgary. We're going to dig into that and some details on some more players coming up next.
Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online and there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment of option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's hims.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. Hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounds products which are not approved by or verified or safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See websites for details on important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
On tomorrow's show, we will have our preview of Flyers versus Oilers, the next in our Flyers After Dark road trip, as well as Phantoms Tuesday. They got their season underway and also won their first game in a shootout. So, a lot of parallels to draw here. We're going to get into that on tomorrow's show. Plus, we're going to answer your mailbag questions on Wednesday. So get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. So then the game in Calgary, I think, we talked about this in our preview. The physicality of Calgary, given where they are in this kind of tear down slash early stages of a rebuild, was obviously going to be a huge factor, and it was, right?
Hmm. Yeah, no question it was. Uh, I mean, look, it's early in the season. Guys are human. It's just going to be that way.
Yeah, I think one of the good things, there was a lot of good things in this game, despite
Sure.
the final score for me. One of the really good things for me was the net front presence was absolutely there. That's something we've harped on, that they really need to get more chances and garbage goals and redirects and all of that right in front of the net. And they had a lot of scoring chances in front of the net in this game.
They did, and that was a good thing, and that's something that, yeah, they need to carry forward for sure. Um, that was a big positive for yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think they just need to get slightly better quality chances because, the
Mhm.
Flyers were ahead in shots, but the Flames had more actual scoring chances and high
They weren't
danger
ahead for the
chances
whole game,
for.
though. It took them a while to get ahead. The Flames did jump on them
Sure.
early. Yeah,
Sure, I'm just saying, like, when all is said and done, the
right,
Flames' chances were better quality chances, even though the Flyers had more. I even checked it and at 5 on 5 because I was concerned the 5 on 3 was affecting those stats, but
right.
no, it held at 5 on 5 too. So, I think that's just something to tweak, but I think that the thought process was there, and I think the big part of it for me was you could see the Michkov and Travis Konechny dynamic building from game one to game two.
Sure.
And in this game, you could see them trying things. And if it didn't
Mhm.
work, they tried it again. And I appreciate that so much. I think that they have like they're trying to build chemistry and they're trying to figure out how to work together. And I love watching that happen in real time.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question Konechny's looking out for him. I like the way he picked up the puck and made sure, he got his point. I like the pass that great pass
Hmm.
that Michkov made that nobody could bury. And that's an issue right there. So when we talk about the Flyers and having a guy of Michkov's caliber, do they really have anybody else of that same caliber for him to play with? Technically, the answer is no. Konechny's the closest thing they have. Owen Tippett's certainly not on that level, and we're going to talk about him and his play. But that's something that we talked about, and that's when I felt like, even though you didn't have to dip deep into free agency for this year, I felt like, if you got another, at least like a finesse kind of Russian player with a high skill level to complete that line, even if you're going to put him and Konechny on the same line, they should have tried to get somebody, whether it's Nemestikov, and he doesn't have a super high skill level, and I forget where he is now, and he maybe that wasn't available. But I'm just saying that kind of guy might have helped them, because there was going to be an issue this year where I don't know how else to say it, but he's going to lose points based on that.
Yeah, I think it's possible, but I also think there's room for growth here. And I think that,
Hmm.
if Michkov is put with the right people can get better. And I think
To a
that,
degree, like he could add points to their ledger for sure, but it depends. Not everybody can get to a bigger ceiling, and even Konechny, I don't know if he can get to a much bigger ceiling either. He'll get some extra points from Michkov for sure, but it's not like he's turning into an 85-point guy either.
yeah, I just love watching this whole process play out in
Yeah,
front of our
sure.
eyes. I think it's really fascinating and really cool to watch. I will say that, the penalty kill, while we did get a shorthanded goal, we love a good Konechny Lawton
Oh
connection
yeah,
here. It was textbook, their style. Love to see it. The penalty kill overall was much weaker in this game. They were three
yeah.
for five. Um,
Face-offs for Lawton were brutal. He was
yeah, I think that
25%.
was a part of it.
Yes.
That was definitely a part of it, and so that's something they're gonna have to address, and I think pretty quickly. I think that, one of the problems there was, I mentioned the 5 on 3. They wouldn't have been down to if Forster hadn't had that fight.
Right.
And I think that if you look at it in a vacuum at the time, it made sense in some way to defend Drysdale in that situation. I don't like that it was Forrester
Doesn't have to be him.
necessarily.
That's the answer. You can't lose a star player for 17 minutes. You
Right,
can't.
and then it dovetailed into, then I think it was Sanheim that took the penalty immediately
Yeah.
afterward that
Yeah.
caused the 5 on 3. Well, you don't get in that fight, you don't have the 5 on 3. Down
Right.
the road, and, you can play the what if game, but I think
Somebody
that
else
that
needed to
was,
do that, not Forster. I appreciate Forster doing it, but the
yeah,
downside is what we just said.
yep, like with the 10-minute
Yeah.
penalty, so that was not great, and I think that kinda changed the momentum of the game,
Yeah, it
really.
definitely was a factor. It was a factor.
So,
Morgan
again, I'm
Frost
not,
Morgan Frost getting hurt was a factor too, because he had really looked good in game one. He was looking
yeah.
good in that game, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I think so. And so I think that, you look especially at Morgan Frost, for he had that great move to win the game in the shootout.
Yep.
I think he was recovered somewhat okay, but I think, having a couple days of rest is certainly going to be beneficial to him.
Yeah.
We'll see how he looks against Edmonton and what they decide to do in terms of the lineup to see if anything changes based on that. But
I
I
mean, it's
do
gonna
think
be
Morgan,
tough to put him in against Draisaitl or McDavid if he's 50%.
right? I think that's going to be the tell, right, in terms of who they put against those guys in the big matchups. But I do think that, that fight aside, Tyson Foerster had a really tremendous game against the Canucks. And I think he's off to a really good start generally.
Yeah, he looks good. I mean, he's more mature physically. He definitely understands the little details of the game. The shot looks good. I don't think the shot's fixed on the power play yet for him. I have to see more of it. I'd
Mhm.
like to see better footwork, like I said, but that's fine. But we got to get to the elephant in the room, and that's Owen Tippett.
Yeah.
He's the
Yeah.
elephant in the room. He has regressed. Now it's early, but when we talked about this, and I'm sure the Flyers talked about it too, because we saw in their behind the scenes, docudrama, whatever you want to call it, that they have meetings all the time. We talked about how Tippett scores goals, and I only saw him trying his move like once each game, and he only put on 4 shots on net in the 2 games. And so, like, if all of a sudden he is going to get like not enough touches, or he can't kind of have a play or two to do it on his own, because let's face it, that's most of the time that's how it's going. Once in a while you could feed him for a one timer and it's going to go in, but you saw how many missed shots he had. I mean, I'm not going to harp on it.
Right.
Everybody saw that.
Right.
You might have to put him as on the third line, like on this team now. He may have to turn into a third line guy to be able to play his game.
It's an interesting thought because, to me, I thought he basically disappeared in the Calgary game. I
Yeah.
just did not notice him at all. And that was of concern to me because the one time I did notice him, I was like, oh, right, Owen Tippett, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was really hard, I think, to gauge like what they were thinking, whether it was a systems thing, whether it was a him thing. I need more data, but I think it's definitely something to just put on a shelf and come back to
Yeah.
in a few games and see where we're at with him. We talked about Jet Luchanko not playing in the Calgary game, but I do want to talk about his play
Yeah,
against
sure.
Vancouver. I think that line overall had it pretty tough with the matchups that they got. He got just under 10 minutes overall, 1 shot on goal. He was 3 for 3 on faceoff, so that's a good start. But I do think there was a little bit of nerves going on there, but I also think that he was able to settle them, and that's the most important part.
Yeah, I think what I saw out of him was at least on the power play is probably where he got that shot. He had that one nice play. He's doing a better job of kind of becoming one of the guys on the power play to kind of try a play to early on, and that's fine.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
that's good. Mostly his defensive details were good, but he had that bad lapse that led to a goal.
Right.
That's on him. Um, yes, we could say it's going to happen to a young player, and that's fine. That'll last a little while, but if it keeps happening, then John's going to, have a problem with it. I think ultimately, though, he had a pretty good game. Physical wise, I saw him get out physical a few times. That's something where that's not going to get much better for the year because he's not going to be able to get stronger during the season. So, like I said, my feeling is the same. He's holding his own. And so my feeling is he should still go back unless he's going to all of a sudden break out game 3 or 4 or something to show me that he can do this every day. Because again, it's okay to say he doesn't look out of place because that's fine. That's the
Yeah.
future for him. But it's a matter of survival. And a lot of
Yeah.
times young players go into the survival mode, which is fine. They could get through a season that way, but we talked about that. And I don't want to see that happen for him.
Absolutely. All right. Well, there's kind of one more topic to talk about with the goaltenders, and that's Ivan Fedotov.
Oh
We're
yeah.
going to talk about him and give our nemesis of the week coming up next. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, forget having to have dozens of tabs open. You can check all the latest stats, view live play by play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And there's so much more action besides the NFL. With the NHL season underway, there are so many options for hockey fans. FanDuel has daily specials like total home team goals for the day, highest scoring game, fastest goals scored, and more. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. All right, so Ivan Fedotov in game 2. made me very nervous the entire game. He was very flaily, if that's a word, but
Yeah,
I
scrambly.
felt like scrambly. And I think that when he's at his best, he's using his frame to do all the work and not the movement to do all the work. And I feel like he has the ability to play that stable, side to side, you know, cutting off the corners, he has the ability to do all that, and he just didn't do that in this game, and I was very confused.
Yeah, I would say, we talked about his side to side movement, and that is something where, again, they're gonna have to pick out which teams excel at that and don't play him against those teams. It's just that simple. I mean, it just sounds mean, but it's true. Uh, there were a couple times on the power play where I thought he made some very strong saves. And if you're
Yep.
going one on one against him, you know, for the most part, he's kind of hard to handle because,
Yeah.
yeah, you're always worried about the size. But in the flow of the game, he just wasn't good. I think what he needs improvement on, and this is something that has nothing to do with the NHL, because look, the fact that he got outplayed by Dustin Wolf is no shock. Dustin Wolf is a guy that's going to be the starting goalie at some point for Calgary. He was tremendous in the AHL. So none of that's surprising that Dustin Wolf looked good. What is surprising is I don't think Fedotov thinks the game as fast as even Dustin Wolf, who, maybe he should because of his age and being and playing more pro hockey. So I think that's what's behind, is that he's not thinking the game fast enough, anticipating.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just do think they are gonna have to be strategic in terms of what starts he gets, and match it up appropriately. But, I do think that he has the potential to settle down once he is a little more adjusted. I just think that this game, for me, was just not it. And as
Yeah,
far
like,
as
I'll give you the goal that kinda bugged
jumping
me.
around.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
goal that kinda bugged me was the Huberdeau, the one that was his
Mhm.
3rd of the season, not the first one. 'Cause that one kinda was like, I feel like he could have read that better."
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And unfortunately, that was kind of the, put it away goal.
Yeah.
And so, whereas I felt like they had been kind of trying to climb their way back into it. And that was just like, nope, we're not. That's what's not happening today. So,
Yeah, and I give good
um,
marks to Farabee. I think Farabee
mhm,
is showing himself. I do, and I think Brink, while getting, some assists, which is good because he's getting a lot of power play time, I'm still don't love his even strength play. Like, that's something where it's like, that's debatable for me.
yeah, I think, obviously he had that great pass to
Yeah,
Farabee, for the goal, but, yeah, I think he has his, like, good moments and some not so great moments, but I
yeah,
felt like for me, his better moments outweighed the other in these 2 games, but there's still some things he
yeah. I
needs
mean,
to
they're
work
keeping him
on
under
for sure.
15 minutes for a reason.
Yep.
We could be real about that.
Yep. Yep. All right. Our nemesis of the week. Last week, I talked about, the big wait until Friday, since we had over a week of downtime between the last preseason game or about a week between the last preseason game and the first regular season game. You talked about the Kelseys and the Mannings being in too many commercials, which that's fair. Totally fair. So I think for me this week, obviously more Flyers After Dark, which has its fun elements to it, but also it's exhausting. And I think it's even more exhausting on weekdays than it is when you have at least the weekend. But it's fun. I like the culture of it a lot, but
And
it does have its
I'll be honest,
challenges.
when I was running the account, there was a point where I nodded off, but because I taped the game, I could, go back and look on my DVR and pick it up from there. So yeah, there was a point where I nodded off. I admit it.
Yeah. Well, I think that is brave of you to admit.
Yeah.
Um, And then I think, the other aspect of it is it's the beginning of the season. Everything is weird. We got we got to have some patience here and wait till
Yes.
things kind of settle out before we really assess. All of these assessments we made on today's show are very early and things could change.
Yep.
And, so there's no like hard and fast judgments on anybody's play, good or bad. I think, as we're starting the season here. So it's just a reminder to have some patience and wait until we have like a few weeks of games to really see how things are going.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So my nemesis of the week is going to be how all of a sudden the shopping networks and places are like almost instantaneously moving on from even Halloween, which hasn't happened yet, to Christmas. Like it's just boom, they're at Christmas already. The sets are decorated like Christmas. And to be fair, I flipping around, I saw a few Hanukkah things, so I was like, okay, good for Hanukkah. It's that little squeaky voice in the corner that gets some mention, but um, everybody's going full blown Christmas already, and it's
Like
crazy. And once the music
Home Goods
starts,
is already set up in like August for
right, and
Christmas.
once the music starts, that's when I get mad because, like, if it's going to be like the day after Thanksgiving, day after Halloween, rather, it used to be Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving, I get it, but that used
Yeah.
to be the old days. Now it's like the day after Halloween. If that music starts and I start hearing Perry Como or guys like that, I'm going to go ballistic.
Yeah, and it's a side note to that in like music platforms like Spotify, you can't block Christmas music from
No,
your artist mix. No, if you're saying like, "Oh, I want to listen to Cher," right?
right.
And you just want to shuffle Cher, you can't say, "I want to listen to everything Cher does except for her Christmas albums."
Oh wow,
Like
I didn't know
you
that.
can't do that. You have to individually block a song. You
Right.
can't like
Wow.
collectively say,
That's
I don't
hard.
wanna. Yeah, it's hard. It is very hard, but, we'll muddle through the fall as
Like,
we
if it was
always
after
do.
Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving, go at it. I'm happy with it. But it's just too early. It's still like maybe these are the last
I'm
couple
already
days
getting ads already.
getting ads. It's 79 degrees out there. Like, what are we doing?
Absolutely. Alright, on that note, that'll do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with a Flyers Oilers preview, Phantoms Tuesday, and so much more. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. Let us know your mailbag questions on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russell Matt Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.